Hello everyone. Today we would like to take you through the admin portion of Recipeasy. The admin portion is where you're going to set up all of your recipes, their steps, videos, and pictures so that your staff can effectively and accurately execute your recipes every time. So we will now click on this admin view button to pull up the admin side. And of course this part of the program is password protected. So we'll now go into that. And here we have the recipe book with all of our recipes in it. Obviously, your recipe book would show you only your recipes. So now we will go into the peanut butter cookie recipe so we can take you through that. So we're just going to tap on that. So on this screen, we have the setup of the peanut butter cookie recipe. At the top here, we just have a picture of the recipe. That's what shows up in the recipe book. We can change the photo here, and we can select from the camera roll, and we can choose any picture in the camera roll that we like to associate with this recipe. Those pictures can come from your camera on your iPad, or it could be downloaded from the website, or it can even come from your iPhone. After completing the recipe, you can save your draft here if you're not completely finished with it, or you can publish it, save it and publish it so that all the devices and your company can execute that recipe. This part right here again is just the name of the recipe. It shows up right here. These are the categories that the recipe belongs to. I can tap that and you're presented with a list of categories set up by your administrator. So you can categorize your recipes so that they're easy to find in the recipe book. Expiration 4 days. That's used for back of the house stock labels, for proper rotation and employee accountability. When you print out labels, it tells you who made it, when it was made, when it expires, and you can also type in information like lot numbers and things of that nature for tracking purposes. It shows here that this is measured in kilograms, so that means that any ingredients throughout this recipe will be measured in kilograms. And here is just a more descriptive name or description of the recipe. So as we scroll down to the bottom here, we see that we have 13 different steps in this recipe. Each of these tiles represents one step. I'm going to tap this right here to hide those recipe details. And here we have 3 different kind of steps. We have an action step. An action step is just simple instructions telling the user exactly what you want them to do. We have weight steps, as in step 2 right here. This is where you're weighing out an ingredient on the scale, which is connected to the device through Bluetooth. And we have timer steps like step 7, mix on speed 2 for 30 seconds. We have 2 different kinds of timer steps. A standard timer just simply blocks the user so they can't advance to the next step until the timer is complete. Or we have advanced timers. Advanced timers allow the user to continue to advance forward through the next steps of the recipe while the timer is counting down. This makes sure that they're productive and that they're staying busy while the timer is counting down. And you can specify at which point in the recipe they have to stop and wait for the timer before they can continue to advance. So we'll just take a quick look at these steps. Let's go into the action step here in step 1, gather ingredients. So here we just have the step name. We give detailed instructions on what the user is supposed to do, and we get to pick a picture showing them what they need in this example. We can again click on change media, and we can pick any picture or video clip that we like from our camera roll. And that's as simple as an action step is. We will now go to a weight step or an ingredient step. Alright, so this step we're just placing an empty container on the scale, and that container is going to weigh about 240 grams or 0.24 kilograms. Here we pick our media, again our picture or video clip. The ingredient right here we can type in like flour or sugar, whatever the ingredient might be. This can be used later for detailed reporting and usage. Description here, this is where we're going to give detailed instructions for the user. And here we have the weight bar. This is what sets up the tolerances for that step. And in this situation, we're set to 240 grams, so this triangle represents 240 grams. And it's saying that any container that weighs between 23 grams and 385 grams would be considered acceptable. Acceptable means that it's within the range, the target range, and you can advance to the next step. If it's less than 23 grams, you would not be able to advance. If it's more than 385 grams, you would not be able to advance. This box right here, the switch, says this step begins with an empty scale. So one of the nice things about Recipeasy is that you never have to push the tare button on a scale. It's all done as a digital tare within the system. So this basically just says, hey, we're zeroing out the scale and we're starting fresh, as opposed to adding ingredients on top of ingredients on top of ingredients. For example, you may have a situation where you put a container on the scale, you add flour, then you add sugar, you add salt, and they're all building on top of each other. And then you take that container off and maybe dump it in the mixer, and you put an empty container back on the scale. Then you would flip the switch right here saying, hey, we're starting over. We're not building on top of other ingredients, we're starting over. Alright, we're going to add step here to complete that step. Alright, so that's how a wait step works. Let's look at one a little more specifically with flour. This one here is add 2 cups of flour. Again, we could type flour here if you like to get detailed reporting in a future version. It's saying that this calls for 308 grams of flour. And as you can see here, the tolerances are much tighter. Now it's saying only between 292 and 322 grams would be considered acceptable. These tolerances are completely customizable. You can simply tap on these little sliders right here and drag them out and set your tolerances however you like, as narrow or as tight as you like. Okay, and you can then just hit add step here when you're done, and that step is now saved. So now let's take a quick look at a timer step. We'll go to step 7 here, make set speed 2 for 30 seconds. Pull that up. Again, same basic information, name and detailed instructions for what the employee is supposed to do. Here we set our duration, we set our picture or video clip, and this right here, allow user to proceed to next step while timer runs. So with this switch turned on, they will be able to advance even while the timer is still running, so that they can start on the next steps within the recipe. Choose blocking step, that is where you specify how far they can go before they cannot proceed any further until the timer is completed. So we'll go ahead and tap that button right there. And as you can see, these are the steps that are from this point forward in the recipe. Let's say that we can let them go all the way to the point where they're going to mix on speed 2 for 10 seconds. So we would tap that, and the checkbox is there. So as this timer, as they're working through the timer steps, they're going to be able to do all these different steps, but when they get to this one, they won't be able to advance anymore until the timer is complete. I'm just going to hit cancel. Okay, and I'm going to hit the little X right here to clear that out because we didn't make any changes. And when the recipe is complete, we could simply save this as a draft and come back and maybe tweak some more things later, or we can publish it, which will save it and then push it to all your devices. And that's it. That's as simple as Recipeasy is for setting up new recipes. We appreciate your time. Thank you.